and we'll get to the NBA here in a second, but it's funny that you know how the NBA, they're struggling to move off LeBron at Christmas, right? It's like I'm watching these playoffs. You know who's not involved? LeBron. And I'm glued to the TV set. Like the NBA needs to next Christmas. I don't need LeBron anymore.
Oh, really?
And I thought I'd start the show with that. I think the NFL, and because it's so powerful, the media hates power being concentrated in one business or a few hands. So the media has always been tougher on the NFL and more congratulatory and softer on the NBA or baseball. They're tough on the NFL. Roger Goodell is really smart. It's a really well-run league. I thought they made a rare scheduling mistake. Cowboys are in the opener at Philly, a game they never win. In fact, if you go look at those games, the Cowboys are 1-5 in their last 6 against Philadelphia, and this is the best Eagles roster in a long time, and it's the worst Cowboys roster in a long time. I don't need to see that game. That feels like November. I do not need to open the NFL. Now, there are games you could open with. Then they have the Cowboys against Kansas City on Thanksgiving. I don't need to see that either. Andy Reid and Mahomes against Dak off a second surgery and Brian Schottenheimer doesn't scream fascinating. Listen, there are traditions like Thanksgiving I'm not going to bail on. And then there are traditions, the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving, we can bail on. No more LeBron on Christmas. Frankly, I'd rather watch Tyrese Halliburton, OKC, Ant. I'm sorry, I would. The Knicks, Boston if Tatum comes back. I'd rather watch those teams. I really would. So it's a quarterback league. We all know Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City, the Bills are just more interesting to watch. And not only do the Cowboys have a second-tier head coach, maybe third-tier, Dak's off a second surgery. And so Dak has become much less dynamic as an athlete. He's a little bit like Aaron Rodgers now. The name, the paycheck is more fascinating than the player. Dak's kind of boring. Great guy, great leader. Dak's kind of boring. The Cowboys are kind of boring. And I was looking at the numbers last year, and I've been saying this now for 2 years. Kansas City is America's team. Everywhere I go, I see Chief stuff. So last year, the most watched team in the NFL was Kansas City. The second most watched team in the NFL was Detroit. And then the Cowboys are now tied for third with San Francisco, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Those teams this year will surpass the Cowboys because they'll be in more big games. And so the Cowboys will be the 5th most watched NFL team by the end of this year, maybe 6th. And the only thing keeping the Cowboys TV numbers up is networks putting them on and the NFL putting them on more. It's really the NFL. Well, what's a network going to do? You jam them on Thanksgiving, you jam them in the opener. There's nothing NBC can do. So this is one of these things. The Cowboys were not a top 20 team last year offensively, and they were 30th defensively. And I think the NFL is usually incredibly proactive, but the opener should have been maybe Detroit and Philadelphia, the 2 best rosters in the NFC. Get Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen somewhere on that. The idea that Dallas has earned that spot, it's Lakers on Christmas. Who cares? It's at some point, you've got to introduce people. Because I understand those 1 o'clock games, there's a lot of games on simultaneously in the NFL. You got to start introducing people. And not only that, but marketing, pushing, and promoting Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen every opportunity. By the way, I'm not even mentioning Jaden Daniels, who I'm fascinated to watch, much more than Dak. And you know what this felt like by the NFL? Remember when Apple inserted the U2 album on your iPod and you didn't want it and you couldn't get rid of it? And there was a backlash. That's what I feel about the Cowboys. They're going to get beat by Philadelphia. They're going to get beat on Thanksgiving. I went and looked at their Thanksgiving numbers. Of the last 12 games the Dallas Cowboys have played on Thanksgiving, 5 of them have been double-digit losses. Okay, that does not scream, get this team on television. Same with the Lakers. There's just better products out there. So PFF came out. They graded all 32 teams on their offseason: coaching, hires, free agency, and draft picks. And those are all substantial. We know football's the coaching sport. Most teams overspend in free agency, but, when the Rams got Stafford, it did make a difference. When trades or free agency, when the Bucs got Brady, sort of made a difference. And the draft, I do think, a good draft is worth a win or two, especially if you shore up your pass rush, your offensive line. So PFF and I may struggle like everybody else in America picking against the spread, okay? But I do take pride in the fact that over the last 4 years, I've been pretty good at taking bad teams and predicting they'll be much better. The Vikings, the Rams you thought were in a rebuild, Denver and Washington last year. And I think, have done a pretty good job saying this team has peaked. Dallas 2 years ago, San Francisco last year. So I agree with PFF across the board. They like what Arizona's done, which I said, this is a really good defensive coach, and they went all in on defense this draft and free agency. I think Arizona is going to be a tough out. They like what the Bears have done. Again, quarterbacks young, shore up the interior O-line, and the coaching staff leans offensive. They love what New England's done. Vrabel, staff, money, they'll be a much better defense. And they don't like the team that I have said for the last year. I love John Lynch. I know him. I love Kyle Shanahan. I think the Niners are a huge, magnificent brand. They gave the Niners a D. They lost Debo, Hufanga, Greenlaw, and instead they went heavy on the defensive line. They still don't have a good offensive line. And they're going to overpay for Brock Purdy. So I've said this. My knock on the Niners is I am seeing something I saw the last 3 to 4 or 5 years with Seattle and Pete Carroll and with Belichick in his last 5 years. Belichick got too much power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Belichick was drafting like coaches draft, not like a GM. And Pete Carroll, who I think is doing a great job with the Raiders. But when Paul Allen died, there was a void. He seized it. John Snyder almost left. I didn't like the Seahawks drafts for several years and said it on draft day. The last 2 to 3 drafts that have been John Snyder drafts, I love the Seahawks roster. Coaches tend to draft to solve tomorrow. GMs draft with a vision down the road. That's why Green Bay, to me, drafts as well as anybody in the last 30 years in this league. They're drafting first-round players they're not going to play in 3 years. That's why they're always good. Belichick would grab a guard because he needed a guard, but he would reach around, as the Rams pointed out one time, to get a guard. That's not who you draft. Yeah, maybe he can solve an issue. You kept reaching on players. So this is what I see with the Niners. When I watch the Niners' last 2 drafts, I see a coach trying to solve issues for the season opener. I don't see a vision. Drafted too many wide receivers. You've got enough already. Stop with the wide receivers and the big contracts. So I think when I like a prime example this year, I think Seattle, John Snyder's one of the best GMs. He drafted a quarterback after just signing a quarterback. Why would you do that? Because he wants Jalen Milroe in 2 years, if Darnold hasn't reached the level he thinks he can, he wants Jalen Milroe, hyper athletic, to be ready to play. That's how you draft. That's how Jordan Love, as Aaron gets older and prickly. That's how you draft. Aaron, as Brett Favre was nearing, the twilight of his career. What you don't do is go grab a running back in the first round because you need a running back, but actually Rashad Penny should probably be a late second-round draft, not a late first-round draft. Or go grab a guard in New England because it solves a problem for the season opener, but that's not really the best for the team long-term. That's why Belichick leaves, and the roster's got no juice. It's one of the worst rosters. He kept drafting for the game, not the future. And so Arizona, New England, Chicago, they're going to be really good teams next year. And I think San Francisco, you guys think I'm nuts on this. They peaked. Don't love the roster, don't love the offensive line, and they're going to overpay for Purdy.